Hello. Okay, so I was just watching one of my favorite readers. Her name is She is the Sun on YouTube. And I was what was I saying? Her name is She's the Sun. Oh, and I was watching a reading, one of her pick a cards. And then I started thinking, and I was wanting to talk about this before, but I just kind of forgot. But I just want to talk about not being ashamed of your karma. Oh, I wanted to talk about this earlier today. Yeah, not being ashamed of your karma and understanding that your karma is not here to punish you, and that there isn't really any bad karma. And okay, I know I'm a very optimistic person, so I'm probably going to look at this from a very optimistic lens. Obviously, there are things that happen that are really crappy, and there are things that people do that will then create an energy that they will receive that overall maybe isn't the greatest, but is good for them. And so I'm just going to be talking about how all of our karma is good for us in the general long run, or it should be. And if you feel like you're experiencing a life that is not good for you, it's probably a sign that you need to be on a different path because you're never supposed to be receiving anything that's not meant for you, that's not good for you, that you don't love and enjoy. But we have free will. So we make decisions, and usually instead of allowing karma to do the work, we do the work ourselves and we're like, okay, this is how I'm going to punish myself because we see life as being a series of punishments rather than just a journey of growth and self discovery. And so, yeah, I was just thinking about that because I was thinking about the karma that I'm living in and the different things that I inherited as a result of my actions. And I'm not going to go into past lives and things like that because I don't know everything about my past lives. But what I do know are the behaviors that I've had in this life and how they've created the realities that I've had to get out of, the paths that I've gone down that I've had to work myself out of. And so I thought maybe I'd explore a few of those just to share that we all do crappy things and then we all get the karma of that. But it's not really punishing. It's meant to just teach us when we're on a good path. And so when I was a kid, I kind of wobbled the line. Oh, okay, so I'll start when I was like really young. So when I was first living in Canada, I began to lie quite a bit. And just white lies and things like that. But I remember one specific one was that I told my friends that I had gone to Disney World and I had never gone to Disney World. And then I confessed to my closest friend at the time that I had never really gone to Disney World. And I began to build up this habit of just kind of lying about things that I didn't need to lie about, but I just did. Usually for a sense of belonging or just to feel a part of something or to set myself apart or because I was carrying on a funny joke that I realized people enjoyed. Things like that. Like when I was in middle school, so this is the continuing of the lies. When I was in middle school, or actually when I was in elementary, it began. I really did like Drake, the artist, and I liked his music, but I didn't have a huge crush on him in the way that I pretended that I did. I pretended that I was huge, like massively in love with him, and I made him like the center of my life, and it became a personality trait of mine. And I did it because I realized that people enjoyed the fact that I liked him so much. And I liked to see that people enjoyed things, so I would just go on because it was just a thing that was easy and it was a character that I could do. And so I would just create this lie and I would go on with the lie and there was really no reason for it, but I just did. But I did like his music. And I did always think he was very talented. I wasn't obsessed with him with the way that I pretended that I was. But I just did it because I saw that people enjoyed it. And that would carry on to this crush that I had on this boy. Like I had a crush on this boy, but it wasn't as intense as the way that I would like market it to be. I was just lying. I don't know why I had to exaggerate it. I just did. And then I would say that I did things that would make me look crazy and like a crazy like in love girl that I didn't do just cuz. And when I think back it's just like why? And I don't know where the lying necessarily comes from. I think it's a combination of my astrology, my birth chart, and just this fact that I have a very wild imagination, that I really enjoy seeing people like be engaged by my personality. I think that's the Leo, the Leo rising. And I like to make people laugh. And I like to take care of people. And one of the ways that I do that is by being like a sense of like woo in their lives. So the different ways that I do that, one of the ways that I would do that is through lying and just creating these narratives. And I've it was never harmful lies, but they were very unnecessary. And I think that those created a karma for me in a behavior pattern that I developed, which was one through like a people pleasing, which I already kind of had, but it got more intense because I would lie to myself about relationships that I wanted to be in. I didn't have boundaries with myself, so the truth became very shifty. And I often had to course correct in the way that I presented myself because the initial personality that I would give off would be hugely shaped by what I could see that people enjoyed about me or enjoyed about the assumptions that they had about me. And then I would craft myself to fit that because I wanted them to enjoy my presence. And so then that also connected to having this, yeah, not great self-esteem, not great self-worth, and often being the butt of the joke in friend groups and being the one that people were able to pick on a little bit more easily and pick at because I could handle it and because I laughed at myself very often and I would contribute to the joke. I wasn't like the classic class clown, but I would say I was an underrated one. Like I just was very good at playing the comedic role, even when I didn't feel very comedic. And then it turned into situations where when I was fed up, it would be this huge, not a huge burst of anger, but this passive aggressive energy or this resentful energy, except it was really on me because I was the one that put myself in this position by crafting this narrative about myself, by lying, by not being truthful. So I developed, boundary issues, and I was in a bunch of friendships that I didn't feel safe within, but I had actually ended up developing close relationships with these people, except on my end, I didn't feel that close to them. I didn't feel that safe because I knew that I had been lying about how I felt and who I was. But on their end, they weren't aware of that. So their experience of the relationship was completely different. And so that ended up leading to me hurting people because I wasn't honest about who I was, just in my personality, or I couldn't be very vulnerable because I didn't feel safe, because I had already just crafted this idea of myself that I wasn't able to be myself in relationships. I had to be what people enjoyed. I wanted to be what would make people feel good, rather than just being myself. And I didn't trust people enough to trust that they would be fine with just me. And so when I finally had to confront all of the lies and the problems, and as I got older, the lies were more complex. So it wasn't like I was telling straight out lies. It was more like ignoring certain emotions, or, saying I'll do things I didn't want to do, or laughing at a joke that somebody made about me that I didn't want to laugh at. The lies become more complicated. But either way, I was lying to myself and I was lying to my friends because I wasn't being honest about how I felt and who I was and how I would like them to see me and receive me. And so then that led me to be in a bunch of relationships, friendships that I didn't feel safe within, by my own doing, but also by theirs. But I did have a role to play. And so when I needed to end those friendships, I ended up hurting people. And I had to face that because I wasn't able to be truthful, because I had this pattern of lying, and it became more complex as I got older and developed into a lot of people pleasing and lack of boundaries and things like that. Now I'm in a position where I'm hurting people that I don't want to, and I'm not reflecting feelings back to them that they thought they had. And so completely changing and disrupting their view of our relationship and our life, and just creating a mess because I couldn't be truthful. So that was the karma that I think I received from developing this habit of lying and not addressing it. But also, it's not like I was being punished, because first of all, I developed this as a child. So, kids, you are what you do. And I still had really great relationships and friendships during that period of time. It's just that they weren't going to last because the foundation wasn't very strong. But I learned a lot about myself. I really developed my people skills. And ultimately, it brought me to this full circle moment where I had to come to terms with who I actually am and how I actually feel. And it gave me a bucket load of experiences that taught me a lot about myself. So if I were to never make any of these mistakes, I wouldn't be who I am today, and I really enjoy who I am in this very moment of my life, more so than I've ever enjoyed who I was before, because there was always a lie going on. And right now, in this point of my life, I'm the most vulnerable and most honest to myself than I've ever been. I really do kind of try and lay it out on the table, and if I am hiding anything, I try to get to the point and figure out why I'm hiding it and what it is that I feel ashamed about. I really am trying not to keep any secrets for myself, because I learned very early on that that is not good. So if I didn't learn those things, who knows what lies I'd be telling myself now and would not figure out until I'm like 45, you know? So karma I did receive, and now I'm in a point in my life where like I don't have many friends. My closest people are my family, and then my best friend, and then like 2 other friends, and then that's kind of it. But, so in some ways, I lost a social life, kind of. Lost and hurt people, so I have to bear the weight of that, bear the weight of maybe not being forgiven. That's on me. There's nothing I can do about that, and nobody owes me anything. Bear the weight of knowing that I betrayed myself by getting into relationships, not just friendships, but a romantic relationship that I didn't want to be in, just cause, and, ultimately got into situations that weren't good for me and weren't safe for me because I carried on this lie. But, now I'm in a better place. It ultimately led me down a road. I had a spiritual awakening. And now I'm in this whole other experience of life that I wouldn't have been on if I didn't start lying when I was like 5 years old. And I know that feels like, are you sure? But I'm convinced it wouldn't be, the life that I live right now would not be it. And I don't know what it would be like. Maybe it'd be better. Maybe it'd be worse. Who knows? Maybe it would just be different. But I had to be a liar in order to get to where I am today. And ultimately stop lying, But in order to know why I shouldn't lie, I had to learn the hard way. And I will say that my astrology, I think that played a role, because there's just a lot that I read about in my birth chart that is kind of like, prone to being a liar. So I'm glad I got it out the way early. I'm glad I succumbed early on, just was full on in all of the aspects of who I could possibly be with my chart. And then just with me and the life circumstances that I have and the things I have around belonging. Yeah, and now here I am. And then I was going to say another thing. When I was younger in elementary, I've had a lot of bystander moments. I've also had moments where I wasn't a bystander, but I have had moments where I was, or where I was an instigator, or where I just did not do anything, or I did not do enough as a kid. And I know that we talk about kids being, naive and blah, 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 but just remembering from what it was like to be a child, I do not think I was that naive. I do not think that I was that unaware. Kids are not stupid. Children are not stupid. And they make intentional decisions. They bully people. They watch people get bullied. They follow the status quo. Kids have their own social environment. And they can be mean, and they can be jerks, and they can be bystanders. And I was never the bully, but I was a bystander in certain situations, and I was an instigator and a follower in certain situations. And it's not cute. And I think I bear the weight of that, in the karma of that, in probably in the friendships that I ended up in the dynamics that I ended up in, where I never felt safe in my friendships, and where I was always kind of on edge. Not in all of them, but in some of them, in the ones that I'm no longer in, which you don't need to know those ones. But yeah, in the ones I'm no longer in, it's because I was not feeling very safe. I was not feeling protected. And I think that was a glimpse at what it was like when you, like, the cost of not protecting people, of not standing up, of not speaking out. And then I faced that internally within myself, the cost of not protecting myself and letting myself fall into these situations that I didn't want to be in and stay in them for years. And really out of desperation and out of a lack of connection with other people, or because I was happy because we connected on some terms, but on other terms I was isolated, and, complicated friendships that regardless I think we experience as teenagers, but I experienced them through very specific lenses, I think because of also the roles that I played as a friend or lacking in being a friend when I was younger. And I needed to learn these lessons because I needed to learn these lessons. If I didn't understand why it's not cool to be a bystander, why it's not cool to be a follower, why it's not cool to be an instigator, I might still be I'm 22 now, and I might still be in friendships where I don't speak up when they're gossiping about people, or I allow myself to continue to be the butt of every joke and become insecure and develop a complex. All these things could happen, and I needed to learn very early on in my life, because I would say I'm still pretty much in the earlier part of my life, that these things are not cute, and that there's karma for that. And the karma is not bad. It's teaching you a lesson. And I'm glad I learned the lesson. I'm glad I'm learning the lesson. Because if I wasn't, I just don't want to really know what life would be like if I was still in this behavioral pattern and not being accountable for the fact that I've been the asshole. I've been the bystander. I've been the gossiper. I've been all these things, and it's not cute. And it may be natural. It may be human nature, but there are things that just because that you can do them doesn't mean you should. And this was teaching me about personal power and social power, community power, and how you're going to behave. What decisions are you going to make? What kind of person are you? So things like that I've been taught. What other things? What other karma am I living out right now? I feel like those are the two big ones that I can think of. The lying and the, like, what kind of friend I've been. I mean, maybe as the younger sister, taking advantage of being the younger person and not seeing all the nuances and the complexities of what the older sibling has to deal with, and maybe expecting more out of them and not expecting as much out of myself. And now facing that karma and realizing that the perception that I have of my childhood and, the ways that I was attacked and hurt in my sibling relationships are not true, and there are lies that we tell ourselves about our behavior and about what happened in order to make ourselves feel better and feel comforted, but that's not the reality. And then having to step into the reality and realize that, one, you're working from these very old-timey traditional ideas about age and maturity and, rising above, and who should have to just put up with abuse and crappy behavior, and understanding, where your emotional responsibility is, and behavioral responsibility, and yeah. But now, and it's hard, because you have to have these really tough conversations and apologize and forgive others and realize that, girl, you can't hold a grudge, especially when you were both in the wrong. And this is in every situation, and really let go of the victim complex. And that's one of the things that karma does. It makes you let go of the whole being a victim thing. But it's good, ultimately, because you don't want to be a victim of your own life. It sucks. It totally does. I can think of another piece of karma I'm probably working out or I've dealt with. Like when I was in first year, I developed this crush. It was a pretty intense crush on this boy, and he didn't really like me back, and I knew that. But in many other ways, I was kind of convinced that I didn't know that and that things were kind of up in the air, but deep down, honestly, I knew. And I think that I was saying to my sister earlier today that I'm not sure if I believe that there's anybody who isn't self-aware. I think that we all know everything about ourselves, but there are things that we really do just push away to the point where you kind of forget, and you just lie to yourself so much that your gaze is completely skewed. But yeah, I liked this boy in first year of university, and he didn't like me back. But we went on a date, and we continued to hang out, and I was very, when I look back at it, I was kind of intense, and I was very pushy about it, and not in a way where I was like, you need to date me, but in a way where I wouldn't accept that he didn't like me and move on. I was still emotionally invested, and I would show that. And even though I wasn't like being a stalker or a predator, it was uncomfortable, and I can imagine it was uncomfortable for him. And I can imagine that it put him in positions that weren't great, because you're trying to not be an asshole while also trying to be true to how you feel, which is that you don't feel anything for this person. And me refusing to accept that is not cute. And so I think that manifested in me getting into a relationship with somebody that I didn't really want to be in. And I knew I didn't want to be in that relationship, but I did it anyways. And I just stuck it out because I just felt like I should, or I don't know, like, who cares about my life? I'm just going to go ahead and give my energy away and give my body away to somebody who I don't feel a connection with. I think that's how that karma showed up in my life. And it was not cute. It wasn't a cute time at all. But I think I needed to learn the lesson of respecting other people's boundaries and respecting when they say no. And I learned that through that relationship, where I ended up becoming a survivor and my own boundaries were crossed and I was sexually violated. And not that I earned that, but just understanding the ways that when we disregard our own feelings and when we disregard the information that is presented to us and pretend like we can't see it, it eventually will develop into a very dangerous situation for yourself if you continue to ignore the signs. And I think that situation in the first year was a glimpse at what happens, or was the first experience of what can happen when you don't acknowledge the feelings. You don't acknowledge the truth because you don't want to, because it's not convenient to you, because it may hurt your feelings, because it might make you feel lonely, because it might make you feel undesirable or unwanted. Okay, so you don't respect your boundaries and you don't respect the other person's boundaries. And now here you are getting into a relationship with someone because you're lonely, because you don't want to be alone, because you just feel like obligated to be with somebody because they're nice, because you met them and now you're in a dynamic that's kind of romantic, so you're just going with it, so you don't have any self-respect, you don't have any boundaries, and then you become a survivor. And it's very easy to become a survivor and do it again and again. And so I feel like that was a lesson I had to learn in that situation. And I think it was connected to all the way back then. And I didn't like assault this guy during first year or anything like that. But I was just pushy emotionally. Like, I had a crush and I wasn't willing to let it go. And it wasn't like I was like, go on a date with me. But whenever we would engage, I would always be very showy about the fact that I liked him. That's probably very difficult for somebody who doesn't like the person back but doesn't want to be an asshole, because then it's just kind of like, and especially because we were developing a friendship kind of at the same time. But for me, I was like, this is a relationship developing, and for him it was a friendship developing. And the fact that I couldn't accept that created a really crappy situation for the two of us. And then it kind of ended really badly because I was resentful by the end, but resentful really at myself because I allowed myself to get there because I didn't listen to the truth. No matter what things that he might have done to try to, make me think that maybe he liked, no, the truth was he didn't like me. I couldn't accept that. 2 years later, that would lead me kind of to a relationship where I didn't like this person, but instead of doing what that guy did, kind of, and, not taking it further, I did because I didn't have boundaries, because I didn't have self respect, because I couldn't acknowledge the truth, even though it was my own truth. It didn't matter. And so, I ended up in a really bad situation. So, karma, but teaches you lessons. Nothing you can't handle, It was a horrible situation. It wasn't the classic experience of sexual violence that you hear about, but it still was. And so I learned that sexual violence is very complicated, which I knew, but only intellectually, because first I wasn't even in the point where I was able to accept that, like, there were many, many experiences of sexual violence that a lot of us have experienced at this point. So many of us are survivors. I was only looking at the very general explanation that we see in TV shows and in the media and things like that. And so everything else was just a bad experience that you had. And when I got out of that relationship, it really redefined the world for me, and it redefined my relationship with my body. And it was the catalyst for ending these friendships and this spiritual awakening and taking a break from university and going off and traveling. And it was a very important push, but I got there, I think, because of a whole history of patterns. But that one experience in first year was a really big thing that I can notice. And honestly, I can even think that the lying as a kid connects to that experience in first year, which connects to that experience in that relationship, and then to where I am now, where I've gotten a lot of experiences and understood what it feels like to be very humiliated and to still dig your feet in and to not respect yourself at all and to not respect other people's boundaries and to lie to yourself and to lie to other people and to be a people pleaser in the worst way ever. And now I'm at a point where I can't go back there, so I just have to go forward. I have to progress in a positive way. But I don't know if I would be that way without all this karma. And I'm living in my karma. And it hasn't all been good, because I'm not a perfect person. But it's all been important and necessary for me, because they were things that I needed to learn, and they were things I could handle learning. Nothing is meant to break you. So if you're in a situation that feels so devastating and filled with distraught, that's probably not your karma. That is a situation that is happening that you need to get out of, because you don't deserve to suffer, because you're not alive to be punished. You're alive to grow and to learn more about yourself and to help the world and to help other people and spread love and joy. And so, it's like that relationship, I didn't deserve to be in a relationship where I would get sexually assaulted and be a survivor at the end of, but it was kind of the karma in terms of my behavior pattern that I would end up in a relationship that I didn't want to be in, just because I don't have boundaries. And it's hard because a lot of our karma is also just inherited from the way that our parents raise us and what they teach us and what they don't. So it's like, in terms of whose fault it is, it's really kind of sketchy, but at the end of the day, you want to be as empowered as you can in your life and kind of try and piece together how you've gotten where you are so that you don't feel powerless, so that you don't feel like you don't ever know why things are happening. It's good to know, even if it's hard to accept. And I'm not saying that by any means I'm in this like incredibly enlightened place where I know everything and I feel like and I can handle it all, because I can't. I can handle it, but I don't know everything, and I don't know what's to come and all of that. But I will say that this whole journey I've been on has been really positive in terms of shining a light on the truth and forcing me to look at it and not be afraid of it anymore, and ultimately tear down these walls of shame that I built up around myself and around who I was, because I was too scared to look at the truth and say it out loud, because I felt embarrassed and I felt humiliated and I felt shameful. And shame is one of those emotions that we just don't need. It's just not good. It's not good for us. And usually the people who we are like, oh, you should be ashamed, they're doing things are from a place of extreme trauma, and those things need to be healed, but usually those things are hard to heal because people are too ashamed to look at their trauma and talk about their trauma. So it's one of those things that I would like to play a role in breaking down. And it's funny that Tara brought me to this conversation because readings online, especially in the beginning of this spiritual journey, really did make me feel like I had a sense of community and like I wasn't alone in what I was feeling. And that was really helpful for me. So I just, I guess, wanted to come on here and contribute and also just share share my karma so that it's not like, because we all have this like invisible karma. And especially if you're not just outright a horrible person, we're not like putting our bad karma out there. I'm not like, I just want to be honest and be like, I too have bad karma. I am also receiving it. I'm also living in my bad karma. Bad, It's not bad. It is what it is. Maybe it is bad, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing, if that makes sense. So, yeah. That's it. I'm going to go back to watching my reading now, but I just wanted to say that, yeah, bye.